starting yet. I thought we were still trying to figure that out. My bad.
Hmm.
No. Long story short, Last of Us 2 could have been an amazing game if they moved their story plot around. But they didn't, and so it's forever trash. Just like Resident Evil 3's remake.
I liked Resident Evil 3's remake.
It has its ups, but overall, I don't really care for it.
I'd say for me, the only real problem I have with Resident Evil 3 is that the specific line from the original, "You want stars, I'll give you stars," bang, gunshot to the head. They took that and put it where, like, it's a throwaway line.
It's a throwaway line, and you can miss it. That's a sin as far as I'm concerned. And even the voice actress was disappointed in that, because apparently, there's a Resident Evil, specialist YouTuber I watch, and she actually got an interview with the voice actress,
Sphere
and they
Hunter?
were going back and forth. I'd have to double check her name. She does, cute little cartoons and whatnot sometimes.
Alright.
But, yeah, the two of them were having a great back and forth. Apparently she did that line in, 6 or 7 different ways for them to use wherever they wanted to put it. And they made it a throwaway line. My issue is the Resident Evil 3 remake felt like an add-on. Like it should have been a DLC to Resident Evil 2.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like a fully fleshed game, which, when you learn that one part a B team was working on it, and 2, it would start production at the same, just after Resident Evil 2 launched, and only had, a year and a half of work on it. You can't blame them.
Yeah.
Doesn't excuse it, but still.
Yeah, I'm not going to make an argument that it's the greatest game ever, but the thing is, I'm not a big Resident Evil fan because I just didn't like the originals by any means. And I'm a huge zombie fan. To me, Resident Evil, the originals were a disappointment, but I wasn't a big fan of the original PlayStation either. I hated the graphics and all that kind of shit. So for me, I didn't have prior attachment. I was like, oh, cool, here's number 2's remake, let's try that out. I like that. I kind of hate Mr. X, though, because he's more irritating than scary. And then Resident Evil 3 came out, and my only problem, now that I think about it, was the stars line, and then what they did to her costume. No, she has to wear skirt. Okay, no. First off, just give her iconic costume, and give alternates. The iconic costume was optional anyway. Why even do that?
I didn't really like what they did with Nemesis's design. I'm totally okay with the fact they tried something new. I'm not going to be against that.
I would have been okay if they gave him an alternate as well. I don't know why they didn't give them all more costumes, because the original did have that.
I don't really have an opinion on the Jill remake. I think that the new design for it is pretty to look at. So I have no issue with that. Now, would I prefer to have the choice to look at the original? Very much so. But I don't.
You'd probably really enjoy the all the mods people came out with specifically to piss off the devs, because they were you think she needs a choice? This fictional character needs a choice? Ooh. Sometimes
that was the problem, though. They picked a fight with one of the oldest and most dedicated modding communities in the world.
Yeah, sometimes I still get notifications popped up on a new mod that came out for Jill's costume. It's holy shit, they just keep going.
Oh yeah, there's great ones too. The funny part is, if you look away from all the ones obviously there to piss people off, there's some legitimately really well-made ones that look like they were made by professionals. That's the thing I find hilarious, personally. Honestly, though, I think the biggest flop I have with Resident Evil 3, if I had to choose one thing, it makes me just not recommend it, unless it's on a super sale, is the lack of nemesis.
I've heard that a lot from people.
And the reason I have for that is in the original one, yes, every time you ran into him, it was scripted. I mean, they had that limitation back then. You have to deal with that fact.
Really? I thought it was supposed to be completely randomized, like he's always somewhere.
That's the thing, though. The way they coded it in the original Resident Evil 3 is they spaced him out, and the fact that he could technically follow you through several doors when he chased you, it felt like he was always on your heels.
Mm-hmm.
They were masterful at how they did it. In the Resident Evil 3 remake, you have that one free roam section, and that's it. That's the entirety of its free roam.
Yeah.
And if you know what you're doing, it's super short. And even then, they cut off one of his stages. They cut off the Dead Factory.
I thought they got rid of the clock tower.
They got rid of the clock tower too. They got rid of those two iconic sections. And the reason I call them iconic is, alright, Dead Factory, they replaced it with the lab. My issue with the lab is it's too clean here.
You wanted it, what, to feel more low budget, or...?
Well, no. Okay, so the Dead Factory in the original was a decontaminant and frickin', what's what I'm looking for here? It was basically for body disposal, is what it broke down to. And it felt like it. It was this gritty, industrial, septic tank-like building. And they used acid, like a specialized acid, to break down the bodies, and you actually use that acid to fight Nemesis. Because at that point, he's in his second form, where he has the tentacle arms, but he doesn't have a rocket launcher. And he'll, like, pick you up with the tentacles and throw you around and do a shit ton of damage to you. And you shoot these little, these levers and these next to pipes to start melting away parts of his body with the acid. It starts off by melting off his tentacles in one arm, and then melts off an entire arm, and the third hit is like washing his body with his tentacles. And again, like, it's, you know, because it was PS1, 2 era, there's not a ton they could do coding-wise, but the way they coded it made it feel super impactful.
So, I mean, you're not saying anything that's incorrect, but I gotta admit, you're kind of ruining Resident Evil 3 for me, because I enjoyed it.
No, like, the combat, I will definitely say, is 100% an improvement. I love the combat, I love the system they used for, like, the slow-mo thing if you get a perfect counter. Carlos, I was afraid they were gonna take away, like, the gung-ho-ness of fucking Carlos, and I was so happy that they made him more generic action movie gung-ho. And I love the fact that you can just straight up haymaker, like, hunters and shit with him. That made me laugh so fucking hard. Oh god. That's tight.
Sure is. Who would have thought you'd find one in a game like this?
I know, right? Now, I still think there's problems, because I always fucking hated any holdout thing in a freaking Resident Evil game. The only game I thought did it right was the cabin in Resident Evil 4. Every time they've tried it after that, it felt really forced, and I hated it. The hospital? I'm give and take on the hospital. I love that they fleshed it out and made it more of an actual section, but at the same time, it felt like the biggest fucking waste of my time and grind in the world.
Yeah, I didn't really care for the hospital myself either.
And that's another thing. Because they took out the clock tower, there were a bunch of like little things where you could like find the bodies of some of the other. Where you can find like the bodies of other mercenaries when you were playing with Carlos in the Watchtower, like holding on to like civilians that they were trying to protect and whatnot. You kind of got that background feeling story of just a mission gone wrong. Because they cut out the clock tower, they just got rid of a lot of those little things. I liked how some of the mercenaries got more fleshed out. I actually really liked that.
Like Mikhail?
Nikolai? Yeah, oh. Mikhail, I really love what they did with him. I love, oh, that is Legion. Hi. Please don't. Please. Don't punch me, bro. Ah! Fuck you, get away from me. No! I refuse! Ah! Alright, anyway, I love, Nicole was already my favorite character in the first one for the little amount of time he had. Seeing that expanded on made me fucking happy. I love it. Now, as for the next part of it though, goodbye. One of the issues I have is what they did with Nikolai. Because he was a bad guy in the original too, but he was a bit more, like, it was obvious because, you know, just 90s storytelling, come on. But it was trying to be subtle. Anytime you saw him kill somebody, or anytime you like saw him doing something shady, he always had an excuse, and it was a plausible sounding excuse. Even if it was, again, generic 90s writing kind of thing. In the remake, he just kind of felt like a cartoon villain to me. Maybe it's just me, but I wasn't a big fan of how they wrote him out. Like in the train, I thought that was a bit weird. I didn't like that.
What do you do in the train again?
When he just locks the door, he looks at Jill and just goes, "Oh, he's not after me, he's after you," and they just leave her to die.
Oh, that.
Yeah. Where in the original, I don't even think he was on the train, if I remember right. Because he missed the train or something. I don't remember anymore. Fuck you, dude. Get away from me.
Titanfall is being prepared.
Hey, bud, you're on fire. I hope you know that. Don't you shoot your laser at me. Fuck you. Anyway.
Stand by for Titanfall.
Again, that's just little things, though. I can look over those because there were improvements that I did really like. In the end, I thought it was too short. I hate what they did with Nemesis. Those are my two biggest problems. Like, I fucking despise what they did with Nemesis. It almost felt like a backwards of what happened in the original. Because, alright, where are you? I got a battery for it.
I'm in front of you.
I see you. Come here, you bitch.
Well, I don't know about that.
Anyway, because the way it worked with Resident Evil like 2 and 3 was in Resident Evil 2, you know, Mr. X came out and everything. And everyone was like, "Oh my god, this is so cool!" Because you had this big dude that like popped up in 3 or 4 parts, and he was just terrifying. You had a sense that he was going to kick your ass if he got near you. But he had that issue where he wasn't really in the game. And then they went, "Alright, we're going to make Resident Evil 3 using this Resident Evil 2 engine and a bunch of the assets, but we're going to try and make the big bad a bit scarier." Then you had Nemesis, and then they're like, "Okay, how can we make it feel like he's chasing you?" So they did a bunch of little things, and they made it so he was able to chase you through 1 or 2 rooms, which gave him that feeling of following. God damn it, you're about to get nuked.
I'm good.
A little dude trying to land on you.
Yep. Killed
And
2
they
of
are
them.
dead. That was great.
Yep.
And then that Reaper just fucked you.
Yeah, I was 1 button push away from ejecting. Hang on a second.
Alright, Alright, I'll wait. Before I go back on my tangent.
That pilot